When people come to Glastonbury, they can see hippies, ley lines and the beautiful view of the Tor towering in the sunset.
The hidden gem is the Mary Magdalene Chapel. It's beautiful, it's really peaceful energy.
Glastonbury people all get on very well together. We've got witches and fairies and ghouls and just ordinary Glastonbury folk.
If Glastonbury was an animal, it would have to be a colourful parrot that does not do what's expected and does not look how it's expected to look.
If we were trying to describe it as an animal, we just couldn't, because most people here would be vegetarians.
Mark Steele's in town.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Mark Steele's in Town, which this week comes from the Somerset town of Glastonbury, one of the most delightful places in the world to go shopping, as long as you're in desperate need of a tarot card or a bucket of hemp. If you need a pint of milk, you've got to go to Bristol. Because this is the hippiest, new ageiest place in the world, if indeed it is in the world. For example, we are at the Assembly Rooms, and this is the only theatre I've ever been to where it says on the What's On brochure, incense may be lit inside the venue. I know you won't believe it, Glastonbury, but other areas, the theatres don't have that. In Glasgow, very few people go, "Shall we take the kids to the pantomime tonight? Only if we can burn the incense or I'm not going." Now, of course, I do have to establish early on here for listeners that there is a motto in this town, which is, this is Glastonbury, which is not where they have the festival that's 7 miles away. We'll come on to the festival in a bit, but first it has to be said that if you're after a place of spiritual, floaty, crystal healing, chanty things, then Glastonbury will not disappoint. Lots of shops sell dream catchers. Actually, I expect a really bad anxiety dream here is, I dreamt that I went up the Tor at summer solstice and I wasn't naked in front of all the neighbours. It's just so embarrassing. The shops in the high street have the most wonderful names. The Psychic Piglet, Myth and Magic. Everywhere sells crystals and Sharma healing. It's so new age. When I saw a place that did aromatherapy, I thought, well, that's the down-to-earth industrial part of the high street. Selling something that I've heard of, the equivalent of an ironmonger's in another town. This is the only high street in the world where if you wanted to describe someone that you were looking for and said, they look like a wizard, it wouldn't help. Whatever you believe, it must be fun here. Where else could you get an incident that causes this headline in the local paper? Woman dressed as vagina stops street fight between a passerby and a man dressed as a penis. Did anyone see that? Did you? I saw it. Do you think this is normal? Like if you go to Bridgewater or Taunton, do you walk around thinking, this is a weird place, no one's dressed as genitals involved in a brawl? There's a goddess temple in the high street. Everywhere else in Britain, the Woolworths became a Poundland. Here it became an organic vegan supermarket. There's a place called the Chocolate Love Temple. Now, in any other town, I would assume that was a shop selling posh chocolates, but here I expect it is actually the headquarters of a religion that worships the aero. There is a market here. I saw the market on a Tuesday, but I bet even there the stall holders are going, all right, ladies and gentlemen, witches and wizards, here we go. I'll tell you what I've got for you today. I've got earth dancing, incense, 7-colour chakras, tumblestones for your aura, your Gaia, your adenoids, your hemorrhoids. Look at this dream catcher. It'll catch you. Can't move your legs because they're stuck in ginseng dream. You have to deliver a cranial massage workshop in the morning. I haven't prepared it in time dream, and I'm not asking. A monkey, 2 score, £35. I tell you what goddess is. He's a bit on the telly, Crime Watch. I'm only laughing about with you, ladies and gentlemen. Stick your hands up. Who wants one? These are 60 quid in the Psychic Piglet. £15. One of the brilliant things about the high street here, you've got all these shops, and the one chain store that you do have, you've got two branches of, which is Boots the Chemist's. I can't think you've made yourself so ill with all the crystal healing. You need to, because you're always popping in for a Nurofen. There is one other chain store here, which is William Hill's. I thought, God, they're taking a chance with all the clairvoyance, aren't they? I love that there's an ethical hairdressers here, which is, I think, thank Lord for that, because I'm so sick of having to go to hairdressers that are war criminals. There's a local paper here that is glorious, called The Oracle. I'm sure you're familiar with. There's a column in the recent one that goes, each day I walk up the Tor barefoot before sunrise. With each step I'm saying, dear Mother Earth, I love you, I honour you. I then wash at the spring, head home, meditate, chant, followed by a goji berry hemp milk, red for base chakra for breakfast. And I find that remarkable because the start to my day is uncannily similar. I have a Greg's pasty, then sit around watching the darts on Sky Sports. But essentially, it's the same. And I love this, the adverts page. Now, see if you could spot the odd one out of the adverts, all on one page. Gothic belly dancing workshop. Sound healing. Use the power of sound to heal yourself. The Merlin Energy Experience. And lastly, man with a van for all removal. Presumably he goes round people's houses going, all right, Goddess, where do you want these Ouija balls? 4 sugars in me ginseng, love. All right. But there must be a reason why Glastonbury attracts this sort of attention. It can't just be that hundreds of crystal healers and goddesses went to the Glastonbury Festival one year and were so out of it they missed it by 7 miles and think it hasn't started yet. First of all, I should ask, I mean, how many people here were brought up in Glastonbury? Yeah. There's a few, but mostly not, right? But, although the area has always attracted spiritual types through the Tor and its Christian and Arthurian connections, but the modern wave of new immigration, as far as I can work out, it seems to have started in the 70s. Now, there was some resistance to this, I think it's fair to say. So I'd like to introduce you to Tom Gillan. How long have you lived in Glastonbury or around this area?
50 years.
So you've lived here in both sort of times, if you like,
BC.
Okay, what do you call it?
Before crystals.
Before. Right. And what was the time like when there was a transition then? Can you remember any sort of hostility to people that were coming in?
No.
You can't. So. Because a lot of people have told me that lots of the cafes, in fact all the cafes except one apparently, had a sign on saying no hippies. I mean, so, does that count as hostility? I don't know.
Yes, I mean, caravans had glass smashed in, but I mean, these guys were
That would count as hostility, wouldn't it?
I mean, it was probably small town sport, you know, I mean, they didn't have anything better to do.
And now on Look West, we're going to look at the sports. Well, in Glastonbury, there were 17 windows put in, hippies. Tom, also, what was the story you were telling me about the guy you remember at the petrol garage?
Well, I was in the lovely spring morning. The guy said, well, there's a few of them about this morning. And I said, well, it's the sunshine and the vibes. And he said, I've lived here 60 years or more, and I'd bug it if I ever felt one.
A round of applause though for Tom. Thanks very much. Obviously there are a few differences in outlook between the pre-New Age residents and the later ones. The book, The New Age of Glastonbury, interviewed people in the town, and it says, John, writer and physical immortalist, says Glastonbury is the heart's chakra, whereas Jane, a mother I interviewed who's not New Age, disagreed, saying the place is full of weirdos. One reason for the mystical aura, if I can use that phrase, may be the Tor, the conical hill. All sorts of religions have gone up there to worship, built churches up there over thousands of years. There are quite a few who believe that up there somewhere there is a portal into an underground world, though if there is, it would be the only underworld that's relatively normal compared to what's on top. But it is glorious. I've been up the Tor and it is beautiful up there, swirling, invigorating wind, a brilliant panoramic view. I'm not sure, if I'm honest, that it follows that it must be a centre of spirits controlling the universe on account of the fact you can see to Shepton Mallet. Glastonbury's connection with spiritualism is actually quite down to earth. It stems from two ancient events. One is that Joseph of Arimathea, who took Jesus down from the cross after the crucifixion, then quite reasonably left Israel and came to Glastonbury, known at the time as the Isle of Avalon, bringing with him the Holy Grail that Jesus drank from at the Last Supper and may even have contained the Messiah's blood. Now, the theory about Joseph was laid out by a chap called Frederick Bligh Bond in a book called The Mystery of Glastonbury. He makes the convincing argument, it is no stretch of the imagination to realise Joseph would have taken the utmost pains to secure his precious relic, a phial of Jesus' blood, and he brought it to Glastonbury, where he buried it under the soil. Now, it is often said that Joseph came here because he'd been before, bringing Jesus to these parts as a young man, and the evidence for this being that bits of Middle Eastern pots and jewellery have been found under the ground that date back 2,000 years. In other words, it appears someone must have made the journey from the Middle East to Somerset about 2,000 years ago, so it stands to reason that was probably Jesus. It's like if someone I went up the post office this morning, there was an American in there. You'd go, oh, well, that'd be Bruce Springsteen then. In fact, Frederick Bligh Bond, who's one of the main figures quoted in support of all this, went on to say, it is clearly stated in a number of scripts that the British Isles have been the seedbed of a select branch of the true Israelite race, from which the modern Jew is a diluted version. So if you thought the Middle East wasn't complicated enough, it also seems that the only true authentic Jews are from Somerset. I mean, in a way it makes sense that the people of Somerset are the lost tribe of Israel, because I'm sure you go to any pub round Shepton Mallet and you hear them saying, I tell you what, my son wants to be a farmer. I said, oi vey, break your mother's heart, why don't you? You'll be a lawyer like the rest of your family. Enough already with this talk of schlepping around with cattle like a nebbish. Anyway, Wurzel toff. On top of that, when Joseph came, he brought a staff with him, stuck it into the ground on Weary-all Hill, and it immediately burst into bloom, becoming a holy bush, until it was vandalised in 2010. Now, I was told then that drum healers did go up to the tree to try and repair it with drum beats through the power of drums. But wouldn't it be brilliant if that worked? Wouldn't that make for an unusual episode of Gardener's Questions? Question here from a Mrs. Watkins, and she says that her rhododendron bush has rotted and died. Is there anything she can do? Well, you're in luck, Mrs. Watkins, because if you get a drum and bass MC to stand over the withered roots playing 130 beats per minute while you lay a track of something like move to the beat, move to the beat, move to the beat. Listen to my flow, I'll make your branches grow, make the green fly go, yo, I'll bring life to the dodo, I'll make your compost settle, bring shine to your petal, I'll make your flowers shoot faster than Sebastian Vettel. You should find that it flowers in mid-June. It's story of Glastonbury then revolves around another captivating religious site here, which is the Abbey. And again, it's beautiful. It's really lovely to go round. And it's had a mixed 1,000 years, the Abbey. It burnt down in the 12th century, was rebuilt, but was smashed up by Henry VIII during the Reformation. But what about this for humiliation? Glastonbury was at one point taken over by Bath. Imagine that. Now, one of the most important ways that an abbey could get prestige and income was from pilgrims. So the abbots of Glastonbury, desperate after the fire and being taken over by Bath, announced a search for the body of King Arthur and Guinevere, and would you believe it, they found them. Lots of evidence has been put forward to prove that this was the body of Arthur. For example, I promise this is true, in the book Myth and Archaeology there, he quotes one scholar who wrote, "The Glastonbury story of King Arthur is true, even though it is historically inaccurate." Now, around this time, there was already a legend of King Arthur by Geoffrey of Monmouth, and there probably was a warrior at some point of some sort called Arthur who fought the Saxons. There's no evidence he was ever king, I don't think, and not all that much proof that he had a magic sword given to him by a lady who lived in a lake and brought up a knight called Lancelot, nor had anyone suggested that he had anything to do with Glastonbury. Now, I don't know, maybe that's just prejudice, but you don't automatically think of King Arthur as being a Somerset person, necessarily, as being someone who went, I tell you what, I went down the lake this morning, you'll never guess who I bumped into. There's a lady in there, isn't there? Happily, the tradition of local theories about stuff being buried here has been maintained, especially by one local resident that you may know, Stuart Pendragon. He became convinced that he was receiving messages from the spirit of Princess Diana, who was telling him where a pile of Dodi Al-Fayed's treasure was buried. So he asked Mendip Council for permission to dig up a roundabout, and they gave it to him. Oh, bless them. So he hired a digger from Chislett's Tool Hire and dug up the roundabout. Where do you start to find the flaws in that council decision? So I was at the pub, the George and Pilgrim. You're all familiar with the George and Pilgrim over the road? First time I went in there, I sat there and someone sat right next to me with their friend and said, suddenly I could sense that they were sending out inaudible messages to scramble our brains and knew I had to start chanting. And it threw me a bit because my experience of chanting is at football matches, and that's probably not what he means, is it? If there was a football team here and loads of the supporters wanted to chant, they'd probably stand there going, "You're..." And you know you are. There are attractions, all sorts of attractions here that don't depend on holy grails and holy bushes. Just down the road is a town called Street, that I should imagine some of you are from. Is there a rivalry with Street? Apparently, until the 1960s, there did used to be battles between Glastonbury and Street, fought in the river. If you got out the wrong side of the river, then you were thrown back in.
Every Saturday night.
Still happening. Does it? But rows between Glastonbury and Street? Yeah. That's quite heartwarming in a way, isn't it? Some of the old traditions survive. I don't know, but it's almost the same place. That's probably a terrible thing to say, but it's got... Well, it's not as pretty. They haven't got a tour, but
Marks and Spencer's.
It's got a Marks and Spencer's. Are you saying that as a good thing?
Yes.
Oh, you are. There's a Hex cider farm where you can go and watch millions of apples getting pulped, and you just drink this cider straight out of the barrel. For listeners who don't know Somerset, it is important to say that Hex cider is a proper cider. It's not like the sweet fizzy bottled muck that they send to the rest of the country. What, you don't like Hex cider? Is it not popular? No? Too corporate for you. Because the why? What's wrong with that? I should have gone to Mudgley. And Mudgley makes better cider than the bloody inferior fascist cider that they make down the road. Well, I'm sorry I didn't have the Mudgley. They sell Hex cider in the George and Pilgrim. That's wrong as well, is it? George and Pilgrim's is wrong.
George and Pilgrim is owned by a massive company. It has nothing to do with this town.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. The Rifleman's? No, I haven't been to the Rifleman's, no. Sorry, I didn't know. I am worse than Hitler. I'd come down here and go, I tell you what, the local cider, it's proper cider, not like the horrible muck we have where I am. Boo! Drinking the wrong proper cider. That, of all the things I was going to talk about, that is the... I've been over William Hills and had a bet over which one to get me run out of town. The cider was 150 to 1. There has been industry here, all sorts of industry here for many years. There was a sheepskin coat factory. The most famous thing ever made here must be this, I reckon, when Muhammad Ali fought Henry Cooper. Both fighters were wearing boxing gloves made at Bailey's of Glastonbury. Thank God that is on the boxing gloves of Glastonbury are on your approved list of items. Which is why at this juncture I would like to introduce you to a man I'm sure most of you know, Bill Knight, whose family runs Knight's Fish and Chip Shop. Firstly, I have to say, I was round his house yesterday and they were very hospitable, and this is honestly, word for word, an exchange I witnessed between Bill and his wife. He asked her, when does the Goddess Conference happen? And she replied, I told you, love, it's the week after the Crop Circle convention. So, how long have you lived in Glastonbury?
70 years, perhaps.
70 years. Yeah. So, would you say that the incomers have saved the town in any way, or have sort of transformed it from a business point of view?
Absolutely. If they weren't here, the town would be a different place altogether. I mean, the High Street's the example of that. It's busy all the way up there. It's the most vibrant town in Somerset. And it's due to the incomers, absolutely.
Now, people that have come into the town, they're as keen on fish and chips as the people that were there in traditional Glastonbury in the 60s?
Not enough, I don't think.
How do you advertise with, crystal healers and druids? What's the...
Well, I don't think... We've been here 104 years. I think people know us by now.
Yeah. We know you. Thanks very much to Bill and his marvellous establishment. It's just like a New Age Jerusalem here with all the different spiritual groups, but it just does to me look as if everybody pretty much gets along. And it attracts artists and singers and poets and bands like the very wonderful Seize the Day and Circulus, and everyone's painting or dancing or something, some of them because they're being creative, some of them because they're not really well, but it's all fine. And although it's 7 miles away, the festival is connected closely with the town. The famous Woodstock Festival with Jimi Hendrix was in 1969, and the Glastonbury Festival was a response to that in some ways. Now, partly, the farm in Pilton, where the festival takes place, was chosen because you can see the Tor from there. And according to the Avalonians, the site was said to be on the ley line between Glastonbury and Stonehenge, suiting the freaky weirdnesses and casual nudity of those early years. You see, some people blame the drugs, but there you are, it was the ley lines that did it. But there might be another reason why the festival is near Glastonbury, which is that there was a festival here in the town of Glastonbury before the First World War, as there was in lots of towns. But once the war started, in most places, the festivals stopped. Here, it was kept going with floats and fancy dress and music, and a festival school was set up. Now, the main venue was here in the Assembly Rooms. Certainly, it's the only venue I've ever been to where I was told, the dressing room's not ready for you yet, Mark. They haven't cleared their dragons out. wasn't a surprise. I bet that's the main job for environmental health round here, clearing out dragons. You've got to get in quick or they scorch the walls. So this is the point where I'd like to introduce Vivian, who, what do you run the Assembly Rooms? What is your...
I do the admin and events. The Assembly Rooms is run for the community, by the community, and it's been bought by community funds. The community owns the place.
You get the impression everyone in Glastonbury is aware of the history of the festivals and all the things that happened here sort of 70, 80 years ago, as well as what's just happened recently.
No, I wouldn't say they are that much aware of what has gone on in
I know there's some people that aren't really aware of what happened half an hour ago.
It's a fascinating place. It was a place of the first library in Glastonbury, and it's a fantastic building.
Right, well, popular.
It's only £500 a share, Mark, if you want one.
So, if I spend 75 pence on a plastic cup of cider, I'm a corporate sellout. Well, thanks very much to Vivian for talking and for all the work in the Assembly Rooms. The festival carried on past the Second World War. There was a fair in 1969 which was reported on by the Guardian newspaper, which said half the town accused those at the fair of being unwashed, of using chalice well for communal ablutions. Glastonbury was once the centre of cosmic power and is now the new Jerusalem. Bristol, on the other hand, is Sodom. The festival is a symbol of Glastonbury because for all of the unworldliness, the festival does have an impact on the real world, and the same can be said of the town. It may or may not be down to the ley lines, but the attitude here is that you're supposed to be communal and individual and not fry the planet, and not everything should be sponsored and sold off to Balfour Beatty. Now, I have been told that there are more faiths in Glastonbury than in any other town in Britain, which must be true because you've pretty much got one each. Even better, whatever the reason, Glastonbury, I think, is an inspiring place, so I will finish with the Arthurian poem from the 12th century dedicated to the town that still applies, I think, today. O noble king, allow no foe to sow discord between us. With sword aimed one almighty blow at blokes dressed as a penis. May you guard us through these summers with chocolate, hemp and crystal, and be saved by healing drummers from the Sodom that is Bristol. Thanks very much, Glastonbury.
Mark Stale's In Town were written and performed by Mark Stale, and additional material by Pete Sinclair. And the producer were Ed Morris.